My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters. I don't say this to brag, but I am confident in my ability to consistently put in effort and produce results. When faced with challenges, I can tirelessly work on them. Teachers and friends at school appreciated my hard work. But surprisingly, my family, who are the closest to me, continued to treat me unfairly. This was very painful for me, and it eventually became a major issue. Our family was not wealthy. We were a family of 5, including my parents and sisters, living in a somewhat old-fashioned house. But there was a reason for that. The house we live in was built by my grandfather on my father's side. I don't even know how old it is. However, my grandfather worked hard when he was young and became successful, leading to his wealth. He built his home in a very prime location and had many spacious rooms. My grandparents on my father's side passed away when I was in elementary school. My grandfather, in particular, was very special to me. His death was a great shock, and I couldn't stop crying on the day of the funeral. When I couldn't leave the coffin, the funeral attendees spoke to me kindly. At that time, I was overwhelmed with sadness. Yet the other family members were enjoying themselves drinking. I couldn't join them and be merry. My grandfather's death was truly heartbreaking for me. He always told me, "Charlotte, you are a hard-working child. If you put your mind to anything, you can surely find a way and succeed." Those words have always stayed with me, and I've devoted myself to doing the best I can. However, strangely, I felt like I didn't fit in with my family. This might be because every day, my dad would complain about his job. And even though my sisters didn't perform well at school, they acted very arrogantly. To be honest, to outsiders, my parents and sisters might seem a bit shameless. Well, I can't say that to them, though. On the other hand, my parents and sisters seem to view me as an embarrassment. Despite my better academic performance, I hardly received any praise, whereas they would lavish compliments on my sisters for the smallest of achievements. During our school days, I never heard of my sisters scoring above 80 on a test. If I recall correctly, they were always on the brink of failing. A score like 60 is just fine. Getting good marks on a test isn't everything. Yet when I would bring home tests with scores above 90, just because you score high doesn't mean you'll be successful in the future. Can't you find an easier way to study? Why can't you be more like us? Charlotte, it's strange. While my friends would be praised by their parents for good grades, I was the one getting scolded. It didn't make sense to me. Moreover, on my sisters' birthdays, they would have special large cakes, but on mine, "Oh, right, it's Charlotte's birthday today, isn't it?" Without even a word of celebration. Why is it just me? It used to make me sad. When my grandfather was alive, he always celebrated with me and gave me gifts. After my grandfather passed away, I felt even more out of place in my family. Still, they provided me with meals and let me go to school. So I thought I shouldn't complain. I was still a student without an income. So I had no choice but to rely on my parents. That's the reality. However, it wasn't just my parents who were hard on me. My sisters were also unfair in their treatment of me. For instance, after dinner, in our house, the rule was that you wash the dishes you used. I'm so full. I can't move. "Charlotte, can you wash my dishes for me?" "I can't do it either." "Charlotte, can you wash mine too?" Then, without waiting for my reply, they would start watching TV, lounging on the sofa, leaving me to do all the cleaning. Hey, you know about the rules, right? Charlotte is the youngest, so it can't be helped. Listen to your older sisters and wash the dishes for them. Some spoiled kids shouldn't complain. Don't be so cheeky even though you're the youngest. Whenever my parents said that, I couldn't retort. I would inevitably end up washing my sister's dishes. Seeing this, my sisters would just laugh. If my parents were people worthy of respect, I would willingly obey them. But in reality, they were far from it. My dad, despite getting older, remained a mere employee earning nothing to boast about. Despite the meager earnings, he'd always drink and sometimes shout loudly enough to disturb the neighbors. Hey, can't you reduce the price a bit more? You're closing soon, right? If you're going to throw it away, just make it cheaper. Wouldn't it be better if you priced it as if 2 items are discounted to the price of 1? This isn't cheap at all. I'm going to another store. As for Mom, she would often say things like this to the store staff, haggling over prices without any shame, even if other customers heard. With this being the daily norm, I never felt a sense of respect towards my family. I believed that I just had to go along with whatever my parents and sisters wanted. Given the circumstances, I decided to focus on my studies and carve out my own future. In a way, my family served as what you might call negative role models. I was strongly determined not to become like them. At school, on the other hand, my teachers and friends acknowledged and appreciated me. That became the support and strength for me to work towards my goals. So, even when my sisters got jobs after high school, I told my parents that I wanted to go to university. While my sisters didn't have the academic skills for college, I wanted to take a different path. What are you talking about? Have you not seen how our family operates? There's no way we can pay for your college. Exactly. Why don't you start working early so you won't be a burden to us? You're being so disrespectful. I had anticipated these reactions, so I had already researched scholarships to ensure that I wouldn't place a financial burden on my parents for university. But even though they weren't spending a dime on my education, they continued to complain about me attending university on a daily basis. It wasn't pleasant for me, but I tried not to let it get to me and kept pushing forward on my chosen path. In reality, I spent almost no time at home, dedicating most of it to my studies and part-time job. Whenever I encountered something I didn't understand, I would go to school to ask the teachers, and at the same time, I put a lot of effort into my part-time job to save money for the future. Essentially, I only returned home to eat and sleep. As a result, during my university years, I did not participate in trivial exchanges with my family. I didn't even have the time to listen. Consequently, I graduated from university with excellent grades and was able to confidently secure a position at a major telecommunications company. To be honest, I wanted to prove something to my family. I wanted to make my grandfather's inherited words, "If you work hard, you'll achieve great success," a reality. I wanted to show my family that the grades I aimed for in school, above 90%, led to this result, now employed at a globally recognized company. I expected that they wouldn't have anything negative to say about me and would be proud. However, I was painfully reminded that my way of thinking didn't resonate with them. My job mainly involved programming given tasks using a computer and sending them to the headquarters via the internet. Although there were branch offices, much of the work could be done from home. Like other employees, I commuted only once or twice a week, following the same work pattern. About a month after joining the company, I began receiving praise from my superior. "Charlotte, you're truly amazing. To think you can already handle this job. You're talented. I look forward to seeing more from you." Respected as a promising newcomer by other employees, I grew even more passionate about my job. I even received hints that maintaining good performance could open opportunities for promotions. Although I had faced harsh treatment from my family, the results of my job brought some ease to my life and emotions. Gratitude towards my family started to grow in my heart. The undeniable fact was that they had supported me to this point. I thought that if I got promoted in the future and my salary increased, I would give my parents a bit of pocket money to express my gratitude. Though my current salary might not be sufficient, I held my grandfather's teachings close to my heart and resolved to work hard to make it a reality. I continued to approach my work with optimism. One day, I was confronted with unbelievable words from my father. That day, I was engrossed in programming in my room as usual. Suddenly, Dad burst into my room, his voice almost a shout. "Hey, how long are you going to play around like that? Start taking your job seriously." I was a mix of surprise and confusion. I remembered explaining to my parents about my job and how I worked before. Yet, it seemed like they didn't understand at all. If you're always at home, you're just like a neat and employed. You need to work more seriously. They seemed to imply that I was a neat, even though I have my own income and it's higher than my sister's. I couldn't understand why they treated me this way. What's more, my sisters also criticized me. "You work so hard but achieve nothing, right? Being called a neat. You wouldn't even be allowed in a normal house." I tried my best to explain my job and how I worked, hoping they would understand. But they refused to listen and saw me as a freeloader who didn't contribute to the household. Well, given their lack of education, I thought they would never understand my way of working. I decided not to try to persuade them and resolved to ignore their words. Explaining remote work to them would be futile without their recognition of its existence. Instead, I decided to focus all my energy on my work. However, after a while, I heard another unbelievable statement from Dad. "Enough is enough. You claim to be doing remote work, but you're no different from a neat. Pack your things and leave this house." I was dumbfounded by his words. The thought of being kicked out of my own home never crossed my mind. I never thought I'd be such a burden to my family. And in that moment, I felt more anger than sadness. "That's right. If you leave, we won't have to spend money on you. No, we can save on Charlotte's food expenses. It'll help our household budget. Finally, we can live without worrying about your mood. Come on, Charlotte, start packing your things." They seemed to think they could say anything to me. I was both shocked and exasperated, feeling anger at them for not considering my feelings and spewing whatever they wanted. I was surprisingly able to keep my composure at that moment. Amidst their smirking, I calmly said, "If that's truly what you think, then I'll leave. Is that all right? What's with the attitude? We want you out as soon as today." Resigned to their wishes, I simply responded, "Understood." But they would never understand why I remained so calm. They failed to grasp something very important. Later, I decided to take swift action. Packing my bags as instructed, I remarked, "Well, I have to find a place to live, so I'm off to the estate agent." My family seemed genuinely pleased as they bid me farewell, probably wishing from the bottom of their hearts that I would leave. I easily found a suitable apartment and moved in. However, there was still business left with my old home. A few days later, I returned to my family home, bringing the estate agent with me. My parents looked puzzled. "What do you want now? Got some business here. What's the matter? You're not thinking of coming back, are you?" The family seemed unhappy with my return and continued with their abrasive remarks. But I paid them no mind. Then the estate agent posed a question to me. "So, as of tomorrow, someone else will be residing in this house. You have no issues with changing the name on the deed?" I nodded in agreement and announced to everyone. "So, starting from tomorrow, this house will belong to Dad. Congratulations. Please make sure you pay the rent promptly." My family seemed utterly confused and taken aback by my proposition. "What are you talking about? I don't understand. This is my house. Why would there be rent?" The estate agent seemed slightly surprised as he explained. "I apologize for the confusion. The deed for this house is under Charlotte's name. Following Charlotte's request, the deed was changed to your name. Effective from tomorrow, all procedures have been completed. So we would like to request the monthly rent payment, which amounts to $2,000. The entire family was shocked by this statement. $2,000? There must be some mistake, right? What's going on? This has always been my house. I don't understand. I should have inherited this house from my father." Seeing my father starting to panic, I gently explained the situation. "Dad, after Grandpa passed away, you never took care of any of the necessary procedures, right? You never officially took over this house. At one point, it became a rental property. I decided to rent it and signed a contract so that everyone could live here. Weren't you aware of that? Having it as a rental meant that depending on circumstances, we could leave immediately, right? Grandpa probably did it thinking about everyone's best interests. But who would have thought that everyone would continue living in this old house? Well, maybe it's typical of a family that can't manage their own affairs. It seems Dad had mistakenly thought he inherited all of Grandpa's assets. Reality isn't always that sweet. However, the family was skeptical about how I had been able to pay $2,000 in rent every month. I calmly organized the facts and continued to explain to them. I was the one who was supposed to inherit Grandpa's inheritance money. So I've been using that money to pay the rent. But now that money has run out. It worked out well, I guess. You'll have to manage from now on." Even after I explained, the family still looked unconvinced. "This isn't fair. That's absurd. Why are you taking over instead of me?" I continued to explain the situation to my family, slightly surprised by his late realization. "But Dad, you and Mom have troubled Grandpa a lot, haven't you? You spend your time playing instead of working, and always said you were short of money. Constantly asking Grandpa for more, right? Moreover, you spoiled my two sisters, teaching them only laziness. Haven't you overlooked how Mom spreads bad rumors about others everywhere? Grandpa said all of this and told me it was pathetic. He said he didn't want to leave his inheritance to such people." Hearing these words, both my parents and my sisters looked shocked. "So, does that mean all of my father-in-law's property is really gone?" I nodded immediately in response to Mom's words. Although Grandpa did earn a lot, he had selfish children and grandchildren, so it's all gone. "Dad, do you remember how many times you got drunk and punched a hole in the wall? Each time, Grandpa paid for the repairs. "Mom, you always wanted branded bags just like young girls, right? And when he didn't buy them for you, you'd constantly complain." Grandpa was fed up with it. And didn't my sisters also take advantage of Grandpa a lot? "If you keep doing such things, of course it'll all be gone, right?" I had heard from my grandpa about everything the family had done to him, so I was confident I could answer any question about it. "Wait a minute. The rent here is $2,000? That's too much for such an old place, isn't it? Isn't there any way?" she pleaded, trembling. Despite its age, the location and size of this place make it quite valuable. It's market price. Nobody could respond to that reply for a while. I no longer needed this house or my family. Thinking it best for the remaining family to do as they please, I bowed to everyone and decided to return to my new home. Afterwards, I received calls almost daily from my parents and sisters. It seemed their life had become quite challenging. Not only the rent, but also utilities had to be added to their monthly expenses. Since Mom doesn't work, the family's living expenses depended solely on Dad and my sister's salaries. However, Dad had a habit of wasting money on alcohol, and my sisters hardly worked, so their income was insufficient. As a result, they seemed to have fallen into debt since my departure. They had no choice but to move out of the rental house my grandfather left behind and into a small, cheap rental home where all four lived together. Naturally, they couldn't each have their own room and seemed to be living cramped in a 6-mat living room. It's the outcome of relying on Grandpa's money for a long time and living without making any effort. I doubt they will change their ways in the future. They probably lack the grit to work hard in the first place. On the other hand, my passion for my job was recognized, and I was promoted at a very early stage. I play a central role in the branch, now even accompanying international business trips, living an exhilarating day-to-day. Privately, colleagues who understand and appreciate my efforts have appeared, making both my personal and professional life fulfilling.
If you're not going to work and just play around the house as a lazy bum, then get a divorce and leave the house. Every month, I have been repaying my husband's thousands of dollars of debt, but my mother-in-law threw these hurtful words at me. Out of respect for the kindness my deceased father-in-law had shown me and my gratitude towards him, I preserved in silence as a dutiful wife. "You're, like, the laziest person alive, right? Always glued to the computer or smartphone. If you have that much time, you should get a job." If she was just a lazy bum, I could forgive her. But this woman manages our assets as she pleases. She's a wicked woman. Even though I work hard as the breadwinner at the company entrusted to me by my father-in-law, both my mother-in-law and husband looked down on me and, unbelievably, even betrayed me. I said that I could no longer tolerate being manipulated by my foolish mother-in-law and husband. "Then, I'll leave. There was no need to suffer unnecessarily." I immediately agreed to the divorce and sorted out my possessions, leaving behind only the debt that the ignorant mother-in-law and husband had accumulated. I moved out, and what awaited the two of them was: "My name is Emily. I'm currently 33 years old. I got married 9 years ago, but we still don't have children. My husband's name is David. We co-run a small printing company inherited from his father. About 3 years ago, my father-in-law passed away. Even before that, we lived with David's parents and helped out with the printing company. After graduating from university, David helped his father, and we rented a house near David's parents' home. Since the father-in-law wanted to entrust the business to David due to his old age, we decided to live together. Until then, I had been working at a web design company, but I quit to help with my father-in-law's printing business. Currently, there are no other employees in the company, and we both handle the work. When the father-in-law was healthy, he employed a female staff member, but since I could manage the office work alone, he decided to let her resign. When my father-in-law was alive, our life living together went on without issues, and we lived harmoniously. However, after losing the main breadwinner, our father-in-law, various problems emerged, making our cohabitation stressful. Are you planning to play around and waste a day at home again? She always has something to say about what I do. If I were at fault, I'd accept your complaints, but I'm not just playing around. So it feels like unfair criticism. David operates the printing machines, packs the finished printed materials, and delivers them using a truck. On the other hand, I mainly handle customer and data management. I sometimes make corrections if there are any issues with the submitted data. My data corrections have been gaining a good reputation, and I have been increasing our sales records, something my mother-in-law is unaware of. David is not familiar with computer operations and is essentially unable to use them. Like the mother-in-law, he doesn't realize that I'm supporting him from behind the scenes. Even when my father-in-law was alive, my mother-in-law was not involved in the business at all. Therefore, she didn't understand computer-related tasks. And when she saw me working in front of the computer, she probably thought I was just playing, which was unavoidable. However, lately, my mother-in-law's behavior towards me has become increasingly strict. And the reason behind this is complicated, causing ripples in our family. It seems that a former employee named Rose is part of the reason. Surprisingly, Rose and David were childhood friends and were classmates from elementary to high school. After the funeral of my father-in-law, Rose started visiting our printing company often. Since my mother-in-law has known Rose since they were children, they had a very close relationship. I heard that Rose was hired at our printing company because my mother-in-law strongly recommended her to my father-in-law. Previously, the father-in-law had criticized Rose's work ethic, saying, "She's always slacking off, and even when she occasionally does the tasks I assign, she's irresponsible and constantly makes careless mistakes." I have taken over her tasks when she resigned and worked with her for a few days. I was taken aback by her careless work attitude. Even if one cannot correct data, it's unacceptable to be almost completely inept at computer operations. Even simple calculations were riddled with errors. So the father-in-law used to write important documents like invoices by hand. Thus, I took over the important document tasks from my father-in-law. When I checked Rose's internet search history on the computer, it was filled with vulgar sites and dating websites that were irrelevant to work. I always had an aversion towards Rose, and it seems the father-in-law felt the same. Rose had a deep relationship with the mother-in-law and often acted as her companion. However, from the perspective of the diligent father-in-law, Rose didn't seem to leave a good impression. The problem is David's behavior. While he used to take his work seriously when the father-in-law was healthy, recently, like the mother-in-law, his behavior towards me has grown harsher. "Your job seems easy. You just play with the computer all day. It feels like I'm the only one working." I suspect this kind of talk, now coming from both my husband and the mother-in-law, is Rose's doing. I never faced such remarks when my father-in-law was alive. Currently, my mother-in-law, David, and I live together. We're doing our best to protect the printing company that the father-in-law left behind. But things are not going smoothly, leaving me deeply concerned. Due to my data correction skills, the number of orders and our sales have increased. However, the business is in a challenging situation, and the reason is clear: the reckless spending habits of my mother-in-law and David. My mother-in-law has always been extravagant, continuously buying luxury brand items, and doesn't heed any advice to change. Similarly, since the father-in-law's death and David's business card now reads CEO, his spending habits seem to have become just as extravagant as the mother-in-law's. Even in a company of just 2 workers, he's called the president or second generation by clients and others. This praise has gotten to his head, leading to misguided behavior becoming a problem. After finishing work, it has become a habit for him to go out drinking almost every evening. Because of this, my mother-in-law often dines out, justifying it as her son is out drinking. Due to the excessive spending of my mother-in-law and David, even when I desperately increase sales, the business remains unstable. Moreover, without consulting anyone, David secured a bank loan for a new venture. What's worse, the loan was for discretionary use. So our revenue isn't even keeping up with the loan repayments. Of course, when I ask David how he uses it, he does not explain. Perhaps the title of being the CEO and inheriting the company's seal from my father-in-law influenced him to casually apply for the loan for leisure purposes. Maybe my mother-in-law perceives the increasing workload and her son gallivanting around with the bank loan as signs that our business is thriving. Misunderstanding the situation, she competes with her son in spending. They've plunged into a terrifying negative spiral. The monthly repayment for David's leisure spending reaches thousands of dollars. As I'm burdened with the accounting task, I struggle to make these payments every month. But since the 2 of them can't curb their spending, I decided to take strict measures. I explained the company's current financial situation and introduced an allowance system for my mother-in-law and David. It's a measure to control wasteful spending and seems entirely reasonable. But the 2 didn't agree and took shocking steps next. Rose mentioned that our company is making good revenue, right? Aren't you misusing the company's money? I heard from Rose that my husband left a good amount of money in the company. Also, there should be some money from his life insurance. It's unbelievable that they're seeking information from Rose, a former employee, about the company's internal situation. Even more, they seem to trust Rose's words more than mine. Despite me being a family member in charge of the company's accounts, whether they genuinely believe Rose or are cherry-picking what suits them to feed their desire for money, I can't tell. But it's evident that if things continue this way, they'll demand money for leisure. Rose, who's likely influencing my husband and mother-in-law, has become a problematic entity for both the company and me. Recently, my marital life with David has turned quite cold. When we got married, we talked about having a boy and a girl before we turned 30. Now, there's no trace of having a child. Even though I'm working hard, both my mother-in-law and David are splurging and frequently dining out. Every day feels like a lonely and lifeless void as I continue to eat simple meals. My sense of powerlessness against their excessive spending intensifies daily. But I've been enduring this situation for 2 reasons. The first is my hobby, social media. Posting self-deprecating content about my current family and work situations garnered a lot of attention. This surprise attention not only helped relieve my stress but also increased my number of followers, providing a refreshing change. The second reason that allowed me to work diligently and withstand the behaviors and comments from my mother-in-law and David is that the company was entrusted to me directly by my father-in-law. My father-in-law was close to me during his lifetime, often telling me, "Emily, I'm entrusting this company to you, someone who's reliable." He assigned me the crucial task of company finance. I also handled the interface with clients that directly influenced the company's performance. And he made sure to create a work environment where I could operate efficiently. Without a doubt, my father-in-law had immense trust in me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left me managing the company's financial flow. Out of my commitment to fulfilling my father-in-law's expectations, I felt driven by a sense of mission to maintain this printing company. He cherished me as a family member, as a daughter, and as a colleague. When David and my mother-in-law were out enjoying themselves, and only my father-in-law and I were working overtime, he'd express concern, saying, "I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my useless wife and useless son. Emily, don't push yourself too hard because of those two. You're free to choose your path." Continuing to protect this printing company that my father-in-law built with hard work over a single generation was also a mark of my gratitude towards him. You're like the laziest person alive, aren't you? Always glued to your computer or smartphone. If you have that much time, you should just work properly. Today, as I noticed and corrected texts in a submitted design that didn't have the required outline, David came up with his complaint. Forgetting to apply an outline is a common error, but if it's overlooked, the text can become garbled during printing. If we request the client to revise the texts, it takes too much time and data exchanges, and there's a risk of failing to complete the task within the provided deadline. Despite being responsible for such critical tasks, being called the laziest person was unbearable. Even if she was lazy, I could forgive her. But this woman controls our assets on her own, using it for her own benefit. Such a wicked woman. The mother-in-law supported David's provocation. The intent of the two was clear. They needed money to splurge. However, to be called the laziest person alive and an evil woman was too harsh of words to bear. Even so, I patiently re-explained the company's financial situation to the two. "I understand your explanation, but where has your father's personal savings gone?" "It's still around, isn't it?" The personal savings of the father-in-law were all used up by the mother-in-law and David. Hence, the fact that David doesn't understand that he took a bank loan from the company's name reflects his utmost ignorance and misconception. "Your father worked so hard, didn't he? He must have had a secret account. Bring it out." Indeed, the father-in-law was dedicated to his work and approached it earnestly. He managed everything with his income without employing excessive tax-saving strategies and not attributing the mother-in-law's extravagant spending to the company's expenses. As a result, there was little money in his personal savings. After using up all his savings, assuming he might have a secret account is just. Given the father-in-law's character, it's impossible to think he'd have such an account. Feeling as though they were tarnishing the father-in-law's life and his attitude towards work, my resentment towards the mother-in-law and my husband only grew. Trapped by their greed for money, can I continue the printing business with these two and repay the father-in-law's wishes? Amidst such troubling thoughts, one day, I witnessed a shocking scene. On a weekend Friday night, a regular client consulted me about printing a catalog for a new product. They wanted to proofread the data over the weekend and requested a sample print on matte paper by the end of the day. David had plans to drink in the evening and couldn't be relied upon. So, I delivered the sample myself since it was a request from a client we had been dealing with for many years. On my way home, I was dumbfounded to run into a couple walking ahead. There, I saw David walking next to a woman with arms crossed. Next to them, matching their pace, was the mother-in-law. Bewildered by the situation before me, I decided to keep my distance and follow them without being noticed. Then, I clearly saw that woman leaning close to David, speaking to him with their faces close together. From her close interactions with David, I recognized the woman. It was Rose, a former employee. Realizing it was Rose, I was left stunned on the spot. I could only stand and watch as the three chatted happily and faded into the distance. I remained motionless until their figures disappeared into an expensive restaurant. This incident shocked me. I can't even recall how I managed to get home after that. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in front of my computer. My mind replayed the scene I had just witnessed, and I couldn't help but ponder it. regardless of the state of our marriage. Coming face to face with such betrayal was deeply upsetting. If David and Rose were indeed in a relationship, then David believed what Rose said would make sense. What puzzled me was the fact that my mother-in-law was with them today. Even though my mother-in-law and Rose have known each other for a long time and are close, seeing them act so familiarly next to David and Rose, who seemed like a couple, was incomprehensible. Was my mother-in-law explicitly approving of David and Rose's relationship, even though I thought such absurdity couldn't be possible? If true, it would explain the drastic changes in the behaviors and words of my mother-in-law and David after my father-in-law's passing. I had hoped to protect the printing company entrusted to me by my father-in-law, but I was lost, not knowing how to proceed. Saturday came, and neither David nor my mother-in-law had returned home late into the night. They only returned on Sunday afternoon. They reported that they had run into each other in the city and decided to go to a spa on a whim. It wasn't just the two of you, was it? I know Rose was with you, too. When I pointed this out calmly, it seemed they realized I was speaking the truth, and both became furiously angry. What has Rose done? She's just looking out for me and my mom. You see, Rose has worked for us for a long time, so she knows you've been using your father's savings for your own benefit. Merely pointing out their actions with Rose made both of them irrationally furious. I'll divorce you. You're the kind of woman who wants to monopolize my father's savings. Get out, if you're not going to work and just loiter around the house. Then get a divorce and leave. The moment they both declared that they wanted a divorce and for me to leave, I responded calmly, understood. I'll do as you say. I had already decided to leave immediately. I had packed my things the previous day and had arranged to send them to my parents' house. I decided to collect my other belongings later. For now, I just wanted to get away from this place as soon as possible. Even if you regret it and want to come back, there's no place for you here. David's words pierced through me. They reminded me of all the hard work and frustration I had experienced. I bit my lip and clenched my fist tightly to hide my emotions. A week later, I received a call from David saying I needed to sign the divorce forms and finalize the transfer of tasks for the father-in-law's company. David, my mother-in-law, and Rose were present when I visited the company. Here it is. Stop looking at it and just sign it quickly. When David presented the divorce forms, my mother-in-law urged me to sign them. You know, it's too late for apologies now. Just be grateful that David and his mother aren't making a big deal out of this. I felt anger at Rose's insensitive and ignorant remark. Still, I didn't want to seem hesitant about the divorce. So after confirming that David had already signed, I silently signed my signature and other necessary information. After filing out the form, all three of them had smug, sickening grins on their faces. Now, hand over the company passbook and such. I pulled out the items from the drawer of the computer desk I had been using and handed them to him. As David excitedly tried to open the passbook, both my mother-in-law and Rose leaned over to peek inside. The expressions on their faces suddenly changed. Huh? What's this? What's going on? After checking the bank book balance, Rose was the first to voice her confusion. This can't be right. David, the mother-in-law murmured, glancing up at David. Hey, what's this? Why is there only a balance of $20? What's the meaning of this? That's all the company has. There might be a small deposit at the end of the month, but we have more expenditures than income here. So, the balance is almost zero. I've explained this multiple times before. I answered calmly. That can't be. We print and deliver goods to our clients every day. How can there be no money? It's true that our monthly sales reach around $20,000. However, aside from the printing machines, we also need other machines like cutters and plate-making machines. Just the lease for these machines costs us more than $6,000 each month. On top of that, our electricity bill is much higher than a typical household's. And we have debts for the delivery trucks and the forklifts used to load them. The monthly repayment for the bank loan we applied for after the father-in-law passed away is over $2,000. As a result, almost all of our sales revenue disappears after it's deposited. Moreover, the personal debts that my mother-in-law and David racked up, which were around $1,300 or more per month, had been paid using my own funds until now. Additionally, I was also covering the household expenses. I took the time to explain the company's situation and household finances again, adding, "Now, I won't need to stretch my funds for the two of you. It's wonderful to think I'll have a more than $1,300 surplus every month. How can there be no money when I'm working so hard? Stop lying already." David, refusing to face the reality, angrily lashed out. However, shouting wouldn't change the situation. It's because, while there is revenue, David and mother-in-law have already squandered the money with their debts. Once we're done with repayments, we might have a surplus of more than $3,000 a month. There won't be any money left to spend during the repayment period, but from now on, it's none of my concern. David and his mother should learn the hardship of managing a company and paying debts personally. When will the repayments end? I felt annoyed but realized the conversation wouldn't progress without answering this question. The bank loan has another 3 years left. David's and mother-in-law's personal debts will continue for more than 5 years. I responded coldly, causing Rose to express her shock. "So, we'll be running at a deficit for the next 3 years? Rose, who had been relying on the company's money, was visibly disappointed. If the current revenue and expenses continue, that seems likely, I said coldly. It was only after Rose grasped the reality that the conversation began to move forward. "You said there's a hidden bank account, right? There should be a hidden account for my husband, right, Rose? You mentioned it." Judging from the mother-in-law's remarks, it's clear that Rose might have given her the idea. Rose, prompted by mother-in-law, widened her eyes and asked a question. "Indeed, that's true. David's dad worked very hard, so there must be a hidden account." Without learning her lesson, she keeps pressing on, spurred by mother-in-law's statements. She seems to have a strong attachment to money. When father-in-law was still around, I neither heard nor saw anything about such an account. If there is one, you all can search within the company. I can't understand why Rose is so convinced about the existence of a hidden account. Perhaps she's watched too many dramas. Slowly, the three of them began to grasp the situation. Among the three, who seemed helpless, David finally asked a pragmatic question. "Wait, how have you been covering the deficit until now?" Finally, a relevant question. "Well, with my personal income," I explained in detail about how I've managed our living expenses so far and that the money came from my side job. I have a blog on social media where I write about the struggles and efforts of managing a small-scale factory, and I have the support of over 1 million followers. Every month, a substantial advertising revenue comes into my personal account. I have such a significant income that I need to file taxes separately from the company's earnings. If you check the ledger later, you'll see that the company's supplementary expenses are my personal loans. Please understand that the company has an obligation to repay. Maybe consult with an accountant or lawyer about how to handle this moving forward. This was the most crucial information I wanted to convey today. Aside from alimony and other issues, I will now hold a creditor position. I've worked hard all these years to protect both the company and the household because they are family. After the divorce and having handed over my company responsibilities, I no longer have any ties. And as a creditor, I rightfully expect my money to be repaid. David, even as the president, there's hardly a difference between you and someone who's broke. Recognizing the situation early, Rose looked at David with a mocking expression. In this situation, I can't marry you. Goodbye? Coldly dismissing David, Rose tried to leave hastily, but David and mother-in-law held her back. It's okay, it's all right. We have some sales, so the bank will provide additional financing. There's no problem. Don't worry, Rose. The company that my husband built has its reputation and trust. There's no need to be overly concerned. Rose's decision on whether money would affect her relationship remained up to her. The three were occupied with their discussion. Having said all that needed to be said, I decided it was time for me to leave. A few months later, David and his mother-in-law sought additional financing from the bank but were denied. They opted to reduce their monthly payments and extend their repayment period. To think that he, as my ex-husband, would be so irresponsible. How pitiful! Our reunion after the divorce came sooner than I thought. A few weeks after our realistic discussions, David and his mother visited my parents' house. Emily, I was foolish. Without you, I can't sustain the company. Please, come back. David knelt, pressing his forehead to the ground, begging desperately for my help. Emily, I'm truly sorry. I've reprimanded David, asking him to reflect on his actions. Please, could you help him once again? The mother-in-law also kneeled beside David, her forehead touching the ground. It seemed the company's finances were in a desperate situation. They had no pride or concern about how other people might see them. However, my decision remained the same. My parents didn't let them step beyond the doorstep. There was a lot of discussion at the entrance, but neither I nor my parents intended to forgive them. The sales are sufficient, so it should be okay. If you need advice, why not consult Rose? She used to work there. My cold words deflated them. They left quietly. As they were leaving, my parents yelled at them for their audacity to show up before me. It was satisfying to watch. But rescheduling alone wouldn't solve the issue. Most of David's company's clients stopped their transactions and directly contacted me for work. Upon my resignation, I sent all of the clients a notice from my personal email address. Given my reliability and work skills, many expressed their desire to continue working with me. David, lacking computer skills, couldn't meet these client demands. I secured an exclusive contract with a major printing company as a personal design office, so there were no issues with print arrangements. According to rumors, Rose began to avoid David. Both David and his mother looked visibly worn, and it seemed they were barely eating. Additionally, I heard their client base had halved, and they were overwhelmed with complaints. There were also incidents where they faced penalties for contract breaches. While they got what they deserved, I didn't imagine they would go down this far. One day, as I was settling into my new life, I visited my father-in-law's grave. At the gravesite, I recalled the words he entrusted to me. Emily, I'd like you to take care of this printing company after me. However, I suspect my foolish wife and son will cause you trouble. If they do, don't hesitate to cut ties with them for your own sake. While my wife and son aren't inherently bad, they are obsessed with money. The father-in-law might have foreseen this outcome. I sincerely apologized to him for not being able to maintain the company and shared a recent proposition from a lawyer. Dear father-in-law, you worked so hard to build the company, but it seems David cannot keep it afloat. I've been informed that bankruptcy is unavoidable. A lawyer proposed that I buy out the company. What would you think? Acquiring the company would be an expense in the tens of millions. However, for me now, it might be a feasible transaction. I have an exclusive contract with a major printing company, and offering it as a subsidiary would hold value. If David changes his mindset, I'm considering hiring him as an employee. This is a token of gratitude and a way to repay the father-in-law. Yet, I believe my father-in-law, from heaven, would probably say, Emily, you don't need to endure any suffering. Walk the path you believe in.
I threw away all your stuff because it was in the way. Aren't we generous? I suspected as much, and indeed, it was Jessica's doing. All my personal belongings were gone. Thankfully, I had taken my PC with me when I went out, so it was safe, but this really made me angry. Ryan was grinning along with her. Jessica might have initiated it, but Brian was definitely complicit. What's with the dazed look? If you need something, why don't you just pick it up? Ha ha ha. You know, I really want you out of the house. Your presence is bothering me. Since Jessica was Brian's daughter from a previous marriage, I let her do as she pleased and refrained from commenting on her upbringing. Yet, at some point, she started showing disrespect, and I've been ignored for over a year now. To top it off, my personal belongings were thrown away by them. Who wouldn't get angry after something like this? I can only pity those who can't even imagine how I become when I'm angry. After all this, divorce seems inevitable. I wonder if Jessica will even be able to attend college in the future. Ryan will likely have no time to enjoy his many hobbies and be stressed out. After all, they won't even have a place to live. It'll undoubtedly be a sight worth watching. Yeah, I see. I'm the unwanted person here, right? Fine. Even if you regret it later, don't come crying to me. I'm no longer involved. I am Natalie, 38 years old. I purchased a single-family home and lived there. Although I built the house, I tell others it's a renovated family home to avoid questions about my job and income. I've always made money through investments. I naturally had an aptitude for high-risk, high-reward stocks, so my assets kept growing. Since my father was into investments, I started learning about it from a young age alongside him. Investing became an integral part of my life. The reason I met Brian, who later became my husband, was that he joined the gym I had been going to for years. We used the same gym equipment and, one day, even wore the same sportswear, which led to him approaching me. From then on, we'd chat whenever we saw each other at the gym and eventually started going out together. Ryan had many hobbies, so being with him was always exciting. As time passed, Brian confessed his feelings to me. From the moment I met you, I was drawn to you. I've been watching you, and I'd like to be in a relationship with you. I know it's too soon, but I'm considering marriage a possibility. Of course, I feel the same way. I'm so happy. Really. Great. But I have something I need to tell you. What is it? And I'm divorced and have a child from that marriage. She's living with my parents. I was scared to tell you because I thought you might reject me. Brian, if there's a chance I could become her mother, we should get to know each other better. Really? Are you sure you're okay with that? What are you talking about? It doesn't bother me at all. My feelings for you won't change over such a thing. Just like that, our relationship began. When we started dating, Brian's daughter Jessica was still in the 6th grade. Hello, Natalie. Can I hang out with you today? Jessica, hello. Come on, join us, eh? Yay! I'm so happy. I love shopping with you, Natalie. It's not fun when I go with my dad. Really? That's so sweet. Hearing that makes me want to buy something for you. Hold on a second. Why are you two having so much fun without me? Let me join in too. Haha. Dad, what are you saying? Brian, are you just jealous that Jessica and I are getting along so well? They always spent their time together in such a harmonious and fun way. That's why I thought she was attached to me. I used to buy clothes that suited Jessica and the accessories she wanted. Whenever we met, we would enjoy eating sweets together, or I would bring them as gifts. She was always delighted. One evening, while having dinner together, Jessica murmured, "I wish I could be with Natalie every day. Life would be so much more fun." That remark prompted Brian to propose. After dating Brian for about 2 years, when Jessica progressed to her last year of middle school, we got married. Considering I was living in a single-family home, the two moved in with me. At that time, I hadn't discussed how I make my living in detail. I vaguely told Brian I worked from home. In the past, I had been open about my work with a previous partner. But that led to him depending on me without working, resulting in a challenging breakup. That's why I've been cautious about revealing my work. I thought I'd talk about it after getting married, but I completely forgot. About a year after we started living together, when Jessica was about to move up a grade in high school, things began to change. Both Brian's and Jessica's attitudes toward me visibly changed in a bad way. Brian's monthly salary was about $1,800, given we lived in a house I owned. He was contributing about $670 for living expenses. But now, he only contributes $130. They spend the rest. Whenever they fall short, they rely on me for more. Their extravagant spending on entertainment and hobbies was evident. So, I decided to talk to Brian about the household expenses. "Hey, Brian, I want to talk about something." "Nick, now, it's my gaming time. Can we make it quick or do it later?" I wanted to discuss Jessica and our finances. "Brian, aren't you spending too much? You're buying items from high-end brands for Jessica, who just began going to high school. How much allowance are you giving her? And your hobbies. I'm not against them, but you spend too much. Especially on in-game purchases. Can't you sell some stuff you don't need anymore?" I think I'm giving Jessica about $670. I want to buy her what she wants. She went through a tough time after the divorce. And she's my only precious daughter. So, what's the problem? And about my hobbies, mind your own business. I don't plan to listen to you. I work hard daily and support this family, so why can't I have fun? $670 for a high schooler. What are you thinking? Wait, so, after using up the $670, she asks me for more. We need to talk with Jessica about this. And about your hobbies. I'm not asking you to quit or reduce them. Just saying you're spending too much. How much do you think it costs to run this household for 3 people? Only $130. How are we supposed to live on that? Just be kind to Jessica, okay? It's my hard-earned money. I should be free to spend it how I like. Besides, I do contribute $130 to the household. It's more than enough since we don't pay rent, right? And you also work, so just use your earnings for our living expenses. Seriously, stop nagging. While it's true you earn that money, there's a limit to everything. Even if this is a house I own, the taxes still add up. The utility bills alone exceed $130. Even when combined with what I earn, it's still not enough because of overspending. What are you talking about? My family managed with $130. If we're short, you can cover it with what you earn as usual. That's because Brian's parents are still actively working, so they manage somehow. And our households are so different in scale and system. Due to that, we have more things to pay for. What? Are you insulting my family's home for being small? Seriously, I'm pissed off. I don't want to talk anymore. Don't talk to me. I didn't think you'd be this annoying. No, I'm not saying anything bad about your family. I was just comparing how much you contribute to the house to what it's like at your parents' place. What do you mean by annoying? While I was speaking, maybe as a sign that Brian wasn't listening. He put on headphones and started a game. That day, we couldn't have any further conversation. I need to tell Jessica about her spending, too, but she's always out and about. And I don't know when she'll be home, so I couldn't find time to have a proper conversation with her. Soon after Jessica moved up to sophomore year of high school, there was a day when the weather was terrible, and we couldn't go out. It was rare for the three of us to be at home, so I suggested that we talk as a family. The two gave me puzzled looks. But we decided to talk in the living room after I assured them it would be quick. First, Jessica, I heard from Brian that you receive an allowance of $670. Despite getting that much, why do you keep asking me for money every month? What are you spending all of it on? And you're out late every night. You need to be more responsible. You're still a minor. Like, so annoying. Why do you have to interfere when you're not even my real mother? It's none of your business. Can you just leave me alone? True, I'm not your biological mother, but I am your mother now. I'm telling you this because if you continue spending money recklessly, you'll face problems in the future. Leave you alone. I can't do that. Please tell me why you need so much money. If you don't, I can't give you any more. You're so annoying. I have many things I want, and not just for fun. I have many social commitments, too. I have a lot of friends. What's your problem, Natalie? That's right. In high school, there are many social commitments among friends. What if she can't participate because she doesn't have money and gets bullied? I understand that there are social commitments, and I get wanting some high-end items, but the problem is the amount. Seriously? What? People around me get about the same amount. It's normal now. You used to buy me anything I wanted, like cakes. I don't get why you're acting differently now. You're not even my real mother. I wish you'd stop pretending to be a family. Wait a second. Did you just say we are not a family? How can you say that? Acting like a mother. I am in a mother's position, so naturally, I have to advise my child. I was quite upset and raised my voice. It seems Jessica didn't take it well. Her face turned red, and she started yelling at me. Tisk, so annoying. I've been pretending to be part of your happy family because you'd buy me whatever I wanted. You were so easy to fool. But now, what's with the change of attitude? I'm done. You have no use to me, so don't talk to me anymore. Jessica, what are you saying? Wait, hey, Natalie, enough. You're being too hard on a sensitive teenager. Apologize to Jessica. Why am I in the wrong? Playing family? What was everything until now? Nah, I thought you were an easy woman to handle. That's why I approached you. Maybe I was wrong. Anyway, just apologize to Jessica, okay? I couldn't understand what Brian meant. Did he approach me because he thought I was easy? Jessica started ignoring me completely the next day. Brian also texted me, saying, "Until you apologize to Jessica, I'll only talk to you minimally." Living with two people who don't even consider me as family felt meaningless. And I began to consider divorce seriously. About a year after they started ignoring me, Jessica became a senior in high school. The recklessness in their spending hadn't changed. Without getting money from me, they started withdrawing cash from the bank account that was meant for utilities. I had been depositing an extra $1,340 every month as a precaution. But every time I checked, all the money was withdrawn. I finally decided to discuss it with Brian, feeling it was going nowhere. Brian, do you have a moment? I need to talk to you. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Did you finally decide to apologize to Jessica? It took you long enough, huh? That's not it. I don't see any reason or value in being with you anymore, Brian. I want both of you to leave this house. What? What are you talking about? Did you hit your head and can't think straight anymore? No, I'm perfectly sane. Haha. Hold on a sec, I'll think about it. I also have to tell Jessica. I'll give you 3 days. I'll be out for work that day. And I'll stop by the gym before coming home. So please pack your things and leave when I'm not around. Nah, all right. Sure, in 3 days. It's unclear whether Brian was truly listening, but Natalie made her intentions clear. The very fact that those two were living in the same house with her was unbearable. And then 3 days passed. That day, she finished her work at a cafe, spent some time reading a book, went to the gym for an extended workout, and then returned home. There were still shoes at the entrance. Were they still here? Thinking this, Natalie was shocked when she opened the shoe cabinet. All her heels, boots, sneakers, everything was gone. She rushed to her room, and not just her accessories, but all her belongings were missing. In the living room, the two of them sat, smirking, and then Jessica spoke after almost a year. "Oh, you're back. What's the rush? You look hilarious. What's the meaning of this? Where are my things? We threw away your stuff because it was in the way. Aren't we so generous?" As Natalie had suspected, it was Jessica's doing. Not just her clothes and makeup, but everything was gone. Only her PC was spared as she'd taken it with her outside. She was furious. "Why are you just standing there? If you need something, why not retrieve it? Haha." We just want you to leave. Your very presence is annoying. Get out of our way. Yeah, I see. I'm a nuisance, right? Fine. If something happens, don't come crying to me. I'm no longer involved. I hope you'll regret this. What do you mean, regret? Why would we need to cling on to you? Exactly. Why would we ever need you? Don't you appreciate us after we married you? Wanting to escape their toxic atmosphere. She quickly packed what little she had and headed to a hotel. She found an available room. A month later, her phone rang continuously. It was from Brian. Finally, you picked up. Natalie, where are you? Come back. Why? You guys kicked me out, remember? And I'm the annoying old lady, right? And if you're sorry, I'll let you live with us again. Just come back. Live with you. Since when did you become a comedian, Brian? More importantly, could you sign the divorce forms I left in the mailbox? Divorce forms? In the mailbox? What are you talking about? Are you serious? Didn't you check the mailbox? Why don't you go and check now? You're in for a surprise. What? Hold on. I'll check. After saying that, I could hear loud footsteps coming from the phone. I guessed he wanted to check the mailbox and was surprised. Hey, Natalie, we've got a notice for the electricity bill. Why is it so expensive? But we still have electricity and hot water. We've been paying, so why did we get this notice? Brian, you really don't know anything. Didn't you know this house is fully electric? With an all-electric system, it costs about this much every month. And by the way, even if you don't pay the electricity bill right away, it doesn't get cut off immediately. Did you even know that? LOL. If there's a reminder, isn't the payment deadline the end of this month? You should pay for it since I don't live in the house anymore. Oh, and I've also changed the bank account for the automatic withdrawal to yours. Why did you do that on your own? I don't have money in my account. How could it get withdrawn? Please, Natalie, can you pay for it? I have no money until the next payday. Why should I? Why do I have to pay for the two of us? I think the mobile phone bills will also arrive soon. You know that, right? Wait a minute. Natalie, don't tell me you changed the mobile phone bill to my account too? What's the problem? The bill for the two of you is now being withdrawn from your account. Isn't that obvious? LOL. What are you talking about? LOL. Why also for Jessica's phone? How much will that be? Yo, you probably don't know, do you? You make in-game purchases without thinking. And Jessica was shopping using a payment method that billed her purchases with her phone bill. When I used to pay for all of you, it came to $1,670 every month. You know, that's a lie. There's no way it costs $1,670 every month. I didn't spend that much. Even if you didn't, Jessica was buying accessories and stuff. She bought a lot every month, you know? So I told you. Even if you claim you didn't spend that much, on average you spent $534 every month. Maybe you're not even aware of it. My phone bill was about $66. So the two of you were spending $1,603 every month. I can't pay that much money. Yo, Brian, should I tell you something? Or maybe it's better if you know. What is it now? What else is there? About the monthly payment amount. It's roughly $5,300. This includes both of your allowances, house taxes, utilities, your car loan, phone bills, and your hobbies. What did you just say? Stop lying. There's no way it's $5,300 every month. That's the amount. That's why I warn you about wasting money. There were times when it even exceeded $6,700. Like when Jessica bought 3 designer brand bags. It exceeded $6,700. Did Jessica really buy that much? How did we even pay for it? Obviously, I paid it. Your salary couldn't cover it. Wait, explain it properly. What do you mean, Brian? Do you know anything about my job? You don't know anything, right? Well, I'll probably visit the house soon, so I'll tell you then. Natalie, are you coming back? That's a lifesaver. Please come back soon. Eva, you're misunderstanding. I'm not moving back in. I'll just drop by when I have time. You should handle the payments yourself. I don't care. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I wasn't completely relieved, but I felt a bit better and just lay around. Suddenly, the phone rang again. I quickly answered and dealt with it. All right, I've set the date. I'll also send an email. I texted Brian that I'd be there in a week and muted his contact. A week later, when I went to the house, Brian had taken a day off and was waiting for me. I figured this would happen, but it felt awkward to tell him about my job now. Maybe I'll just mention it casually when I leave. Natalie, I've been waiting. Who are those guys with you? Don't tell me, Natalie. Were you cheating with multiple guys? How can you even think like that? LOL. You're wrong. I had someone over to look at the house, to get the home checked. Why? I didn't hear about this. I'll tell you everything when we go home. But why do you think? Oh, speaking of which, what about the payment? Did you make it? And the divorce forms. I had to bow down to my parents and borrow money to pay. I'm not getting a divorce. So, you're going to make the payments from next month, Natalie. No, that's impossible. I'm definitely getting a divorce. And I will absolutely not make the payment. Why do I have to get a divorce? Why did you come back in the first place? You still don't get it. I need you to sign the divorce forms, and of course, I came to show someone the house. And I've said it many times, I don't intend to get a divorce. So I won't sign it. And what do you mean by showing the house? If you don't sign the divorce papers, Jessica will hate you. If you're reluctant about the divorce, I'll consult a lawyer. I'll sue you for compensation for all the money spent and for discarding all of my belongings. That's a problem. I can't pay. Okay, I'll sign it. Brian, did you get scared hearing about the lawyer? Or do you not want your parents to find out? No, I just don't want Jessica to hate me. I don't care about divorce if it means avoiding all the money claims. But, Natalie, can't we live together again? What? No. Why should we live together? Especially if we're divorcing. After all the terrible things you've done. I can't believe you'd say something like that. I really question your sanity. No. Yeah, right. What's this about showing the house? About the showing. At that moment, the people who were assessing the house had finished their inspection. First, she had him sign the divorce forms. Then, they discussed the assessment result. In fact, these people were from a demolition company. They had come to appraise the cost of tearing down this house. Brian, I want you to move out of this house, so get ready. Huh? What do you mean? Why do I have to leave this house? Because this is the house I built. It's obvious, isn't it? You built it. I thought it was a renovation of your family home. I didn't know that. Nope, I built it. I can't discuss it when there's no trust. I was thinking of telling you soon, but before that, your true colors showed. And I'm glad they did. Seriously? You mean you've been earning that much? And you said there was no mortgage on the house. Yes, it's all paid off. No mortgage. We'll talk about all that later. For now, all I want is to file the divorce petition. Bye for now. If you're earning that much, I won't get a divorce. Give me that paper. As he said this, Brian lunged to snatch the divorce forms. Fortunately, the sturdy demolition workers present restrained him. While he was held back, she slipped away and was driven to the court by one of the demolition workers. Once she submitted the documents, the divorce process began. A while later, after the divorce process finally came to an end, Ryan called her multiple times. She hadn't informed him about her job, so he was curious. She reluctantly answered the phone to inform him that the divorce papers arrived. To her surprise, it was Jessica on the other end of the line. Judging by the echoing sound, it seemed she was on speaker, and Brian's voice could be heard in the background. Finally, listen. Why does my dad have to be told to leave his own house by someone like you? Explain it to me in a way I can understand. Jessica? Yes, I told him to leave. It's the house I bought, after all. What? My dad told me this was just a renovation of your family home. He said it's easy to claim since it's not really yours. Are you lying? That's so pathetic. Really? So Brian said that? Huh? Thanks for letting me know, Jessica. Hey, Jessica, don't say unnecessary things. How on earth were you able to pay off the mortgage on this house and handle large bills? I meant to tell you about that. I forgot. Now that the divorce is finalized, I can tell you. I'm an investor. I invest in stocks, of course, but also in various other things. I know someone who invested and kept complaining about not making any money. If that smart person failed, how did you succeed? You must be lying. Unfortunately, I'm not lying. After all, my father was a successful investor. He's moved overseas now, so I don't see him often. And why do you? A high school student. No such people? Nah, that explains it. That's why I never met your dad in person. Exactly. There was still an epidemic going on there. So he couldn't return to Japan. You never questioned it, huh? You investing. Did you borrow money from your parents and invest it? Well, you need capital, don't you? I only borrowed at first but paid it back immediately. We won't meet again. And while we're on the subject, want to know my total assets? What are you playing at? even if you say you're an investor. Your assets must be around $66,800 at most, right? I know a little because my friend talked a lot about it. People who fail like that shouldn't call themselves investors. They're just talk and no talent. Jessica, you're way off with the number. What? You mean like $668,000? Maybe a little more. Just a mere $6 million. What? What? $6 million? Wait, seriously, $6 million? No way, you're lying. Of course, it's a lie. There's no way you have that earning ability. Besides, all you have looks cheap. Believe it's a lie if you want. We'll never meet again. Real investors live quite simply, you know. They only buy what's absolutely necessary. Ryan, you should watch out for Jessica's friends, too. And I'll talk to Jessica later. Natalie, please come back. I beg you. Impossible. Impossible. Move out and move on. That house is going to be demolished. Goodbye. After saying that, I immediately blocked calls and messages. Finally feeling liberated both mentally and physically, I started looking for a new place to live. A few days later, a call came from an unknown number. Thinking it was a real estate agent, I answered, only to find it was Brian's work phone. She realized she didn't know his work number. Is that you, Natalie? Don't hang up. Please just listen. Why are you calling? I want you to stop. I thought it was a joke, but the demolition crew is really here. They're saying to leave now because they're going to tear down the house. Please, do something. Where are you living now? Can we move in with you? I kindly told you to leave quickly because it would be demolished. Out of the kindness of my heart. Seriously, no. Don't call again. Goodbye. Mom, wait. I'm sorry for what I said before. I really regretted it afterward. I want to live with you again. Please come back. Jessica, that's too bad. We're already divorced, so I'm not your mom anymore. I won't be fooled by your act, and we're not playing house. I told you before, right? That you'd regret it, but don't come crying to me. You said that would never happen, right? I don't need your apologies. It's none of my business. I was really wrong, and I regret it. So, marry Dad again. If things stay like this, I can't even go to college. My phone will be cut off. Oh, how pitiful. But from my perspective, I couldn't care less. I tried my best to be your mother, but you trampled on that. Do you realize the extent of what you did? Life isn't so easy, so maybe give up on college and get a job. Learn the value of money by earning it yourself. If you really want to go to college, why not get a scholarship? No way. I absolutely don't want a scholarship. If I do that, my fun college life will be ruined. Telling me that won't change anything. Ultimately, you just want to play in college and not study. Well, you're still young. Why not try hard with Brian? Bye now. After hanging up, she immediately blocked the number. To change her mood, she decided to change her phone number and all contacts. About 3 months later, I heard about Brian's recent situation from someone at the gym who was close to him. He's been working around the clock to repay the money he borrowed from his parents. and he seems to have no time for hobbies. I also saw Jessica in the nightlife district when I went out for drinks with a friend the other day. Now, I don't feel anything for her. After all, the current lives of those two are what's called karma. I divorced without telling my parents, so I shared the whole sequence of events to them. They then proposed that I live with them, so, in a way to honor and take care of them, I decided to go to my parents' place. So, I will be leaving Japan soon. This means I won't be involved or hear any news about those two, and I can lead a new life, hoping for a wonderful encounter abroad. I plan to enjoy my life overseas with hopeful feelings and expectations. I just got a new house for $200,000. Jessica came over with a big grin to announce this. Despite it being the funeral of my mother, she arrived later than promised, dressed in a bright red, revealing dress. All the relatives stared at Jessica in astonishment, but next to her, Daniel was smiling happily. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at this scene and Jessica's words. "You can have this bank book. Go ahead, take it." Are you jealous, mother-in-law? If I had $80 billion, I'd have fun every day. Plus, I wouldn't have to worry about you all. At Jessica's words, I laughed out loud again. Jessica looked puzzled by my laughter and seemed about to ask, "Is something wrong?" So, I decided to inform her of a rather amusing fact. Actually, you can't withdraw money from that bank book anymore. Neither Jessica nor Daniel seemed to grasp what I was saying. But the real challenges are about to begin. I, Karen, am a 56-year-old ordinary housewife. People who've known me for a long time think of me as a calm and easily deceived person. However, I don't see myself that way. My husband, Michael, and I met through an arranged introduction. My mother admired his hard work at her company and decided to bring us together. Michael has a kind personality and treasures me. Our close bond is so enviable that it feels like we fell in love after a passionate romance, and even our friends are jealous. We've been married for 34 years. Even now, when we go out on a date, we hold hands and feel happy. We have a son named Daniel, who is 33 years old. I thought of giving Daniel a sibling, but raising him was quite challenging. So we decided not to have a second child. He was always irresponsible and barely managed to graduate from college. After that, he started working at a small local company. But he didn't stick with it for long and switched jobs several times. He was also a big spender, and while living at his parents' home, he never contributed to the living expenses. 2 years ago, Daniel got married. One night, he suddenly burst into our room, waking us up, and excitedly announced, "I'm getting married." We hoped that this might be the turning point for him to finally mature. So we decided to support his decision. But when we saw the appearance of the woman he introduced, we couldn't help but gasp in shock. "Hi there, I'm Jessica. Nice to meet you all," making her entrance with her glittery blonde hair swaying. Our eldest son's bride, Jessica, was dressed in a daring mini dress. It was so revealing that my husband, Michael, and I had to look away. This is Jessica, the woman I'm marrying. We filed our marriage papers yesterday. That's right. And I'm 8 weeks pregnant. Aren't you excited? It wasn't just Daniel's words, but also Jessica's cheerful confession that increased our surprise. The reason they rushed into marriage was that Jessica was pregnant. Daniel, why didn't you tell us about something so important? Huh? It wouldn't have made a difference if I told you. Oh, by the way, we don't have any money. Can you help with the delivery costs, in addition to the sudden marriage and pregnancy announcement? Hearing Daniel's plea for money left me stunned. But Michael gently held my hand, calming me without saying a word. Then he spoke quietly to Daniel. Daniel, you got Jessica pregnant without being able to provide for yourselves financially? That's why we got married properly, so there's no problem, right? Although slightly irritated by Daniel's words, Michael responded calmly. Just getting married doesn't mean you've taken responsibility. Michael and I had the same thought, and he immediately replied to Daniel. Merely registering your marriage doesn't mean you've taken responsibility. You need money and a place to live. Jessica, right. Since you've already registered the marriage, we won't ask you to revoke it. By the way, aren't Lisa's parents coming here today? Jessica confessed. Actually, I've been estranged from my parents. So, I haven't informed them about our marriage and pregnancy yet. Upon hearing this, both Michael and I were taken aback, unable to find words. Daniel, appearing a bit annoyed, snorted and stood up. So, you're saying you don't care about us or our child, right? Michael responded. That's not what I'm saying, but you're going to be a father, and I want you to step up. Jessica, we'll support you here until the baby is born. We have a spare room, and there are people in the house who can help, so don't worry. However, the cost of childbirth, a new home, and living expenses afterward are something Daniel needs to work hard for. Jessica, you'll eventually have to tell your parents. Under these conditions, we'll assist. Upon hearing Michael's terms, both Daniel and Jessica took a moment to think and then slowly nodded in agreement. Afterward, Jessica attempted to reconcile with her parents by reaching out. Eventually, a call came in from Jessica's father to Michael, and a reunion with Jessica's parents was arranged. Jessica's parents turned out to be truly warm-hearted individuals. It seemed that they weren't so much estranged as they had just lost touch with Jessica. We later found out about Jessica's past involvement in an affair with a married man from the neighborhood. She'd been working in the nightlife industry ever since. And despite her parents' multiple pleas to quit, she'd cut ties and stopped communicating with them. When Daniel heard this story, he looked in disbelief. However, he soon remarked, Jessica is truly captivating. It's no wonder she attracts the attention of men. It seemed that Daniel was genuinely proud of his girlfriend. As we'd anticipated, after Jessica came to our house, she didn't help with any household chores. She would sleep until noon, eat meals prepared by the house help, and then retreat to her room. Occasionally, she would ask for money to buy things for the baby. And if I refused, she would tattle on me to Daniel, which for some reason led to me being blamed. However, perhaps because Michael had warned her initially, she never behaved this way in front of him. When I told Michael about Jessica's behavior, he tried to be around as much as possible. However, he was busy with work on weekdays. Jessica would wait for moments when I was alone to continuously demand money. Even after giving birth, Daniel kept postponing their move to a new home under various pretexts. Even when we suggested a new house, we'd hear complaints like, "Isn't it a bit small?" or "The location isn't really good." "Daniel, haven't you found a new house yet? How long are you planning to stay here?" "Hold on a second, of course I'm looking." "But we're family, right?" Or are you suggesting we should live in some rundown apartment and face hardships? Even though Daniel and Jessica can be a bit self-centered, they truly love their child. We don't wish hardships upon them. Knowing our feelings or not, Daniel and Jessica often bring up their child to manipulate us, making it difficult for us to reprimand them. In the midst of this, my mother fell critically ill, and we got a call. The doctor told us that night was crucial, so Michael and I stayed by her side. We tried contacting Daniel several times, but couldn't get through. After several attempts, we finally reached Daniel the next morning. "Where were you? I tried contacting you so many times. Grandma wanted to see you both one last time. She was crying about it." Sorry. Jessica and I went out for a drive." "Yes, that's right," she said, smiling in agreement. Michael and I were frozen. A mix of grief over losing my mother and anger towards Daniel and Jessica. "The funeral's the day after tomorrow, right? I don't have any mourning clothes. Can you arrange some for me?" Saying this, Daniel, holding Jessica's hand, left the room without even looking at my mother. "It's my fault. I couldn't raise Daniel properly. I'm truly sorry." "Karen, it's not like that. It's just his behavior that's wrong. I feel sorry for the child, but we can't continue living with them. We might have to take some action soon." I nodded in agreement with Michael's words, feeling more determined. After all the funeral arrangements were completed, we returned home to find only our housekeeper and our grandchild. Daniel and Jessica had left the child 2 nights ago and hadn't returned. I contacted a certain place and gathered the necessary documents. Then, I went to my mother's house and saw signs of someone searching for something. Looking in the drawers, I immediately realized what was missing. It was the passbook and seal that my mother always used. I quickly sent a message to Michael. I rushed to the bank and had the account temporarily suspended. My mother was a bit careless and wrote her PIN on the passbook. About $20,000 had already been used. But considering the total amount, the damage wasn't too bad. Daniel and Jessica did not appear at the wake and did not return home even the next morning. We prepared mourning clothes for Daniel and Jessica just in case and left the house, asking the housekeeper to look after our grandson. In my bag were documents showing how much money had been withdrawn from my mother's account and materials for my grandson's future. But there was still no word from Daniel and Jessica. Still, I was fully prepared for whatever time they might come. I took a deep breath to calm myself. As the funeral began, there was no sign of Daniel and Jessica. Were they planning not to attend their grandmother's funeral? Just as I started to panic a bit, suddenly, there was a stir in the venue. People quickly made their way, and through the aisle, Daniel and Jessica appeared. When they saw us, they approached with a smile, waving my mother's passbook. And an unusually cheerful voice echoed in the funeral hall. "We got a new house for $200,000. With that, Jessica winked at me. Despite it being my mother's funeral, she arrived later than promised, dressed in a bright red, revealing dress. The relatives all looked at her in astonishment, but Daniel smiled happily next to her. Seeing this scene, and hearing Jessica's words, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "You can have that passbook. Go ahead and take it. Are you jealous, mother-in-law? With $80 billion, you can have fun every day. And you don't have to be considerate of you guys anymore." At Jessica's words, I laughed out loud again. Jessica seemed puzzled by my laughter, as if wanting to ask, "What's so funny?" So, I decided to share a little amusing fact with her. "Actually, you can't withdraw money with that passbook anymore." "What do you mean I can't withdraw? Everything was fine just yesterday. What's going on?" It seemed like Jessica and Daniel weren't quite grasping what I was saying. But the real game is just beginning. About that account, I had it frozen so it couldn't be used as of yesterday. Jessica seemed completely lost and approached me aggressively. I calmly took out the documents that served as proof and presented them to her. Jessica still looked clueless, but Daniel, who had worked at a bank before, seemed to have quickly grasped the situation. "You've got to be kidding. This is for real. This is bad. Why did the account get frozen so easily? Please unfreeze it. The account will remain frozen until the inheritance procedures are properly completed. It could take at least 3 months, you should understand." Daniel was lost for words and slumped right there on the spot. Jessica seemed to finally understand the gravity of the situation and looked at us, pleading for help. "But we don't have any money. How are we supposed to live from now on? You withdrew $20,000 just 2 days ago, didn't you?" When I questioned her like this, Jessica's face turned beet red, and her entire body started to tremble slightly. She slowly opened her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. "That money is already gone. It vanished in no time after buying dresses, suits, and accessories. Why don't you understand that? It's our money. Give it back." "Your money? That's funny. Originally, that money was supposed to be inherited by my wife." For some reason, Jessica looked at me as if she had won. "I threw away that will a long time ago. After I gave that secretary a little taste of the good life, she became putty in my hands. So, I made her rewrite the will to leave everything to Daniel. That's why all that money belongs to Daniel." Jessica continued to giggle, but when she noticed Daniel laughing, she looked at us, puzzled. The next moment, Daniel started laughing even louder. Unfortunately, he quit our company yesterday. Also, the will he threw away was just a copy. The original has always been safely kept by me. He casually opened his bag, took out a cylindrical case, and carefully unfolded a piece of paper from inside. I want you to take a good look at what is written here. If anything has been added to this will afterward, it's a fake and should be immediately destroyed. All the inheritance should go to my dear daughter, Karen. If anything happens to Karen, the inheritance should be passed on to the company's successor. However, Daniel is allowed to inherit up to $20,000, though it ultimately depends on Karen's decision. Wait, Daniel, is your inheritance only $20,000? And you've already spent it all, haven't you? We rushed into marriage because you said you would get a fortune. I was stunned and disappointed to hear they had rushed into marriage for such a reason. I was at a loss for words. Daniel seemed surprised and confused by the unexpected will his grandmother had left. Feeling my mother's deep love, I glared at Jessica sharply. The $20,000 is money for me to decide what to do with. I won't let it slide just because you two decided to spend it recklessly. Even if you say that, the money is already spent, and we've bought a new house in full. We have to pay for it tomorrow. I pushed Jessica away as she pleaded, tugging at my sleeve. I looked down on her disdainfully. Then, with a smirk, I left Jessica with a look of despair on her face. Move out of the house right after the funeral. I will refer you to a new place to live. If the two of you work together, you should be able to make a living from now on. Jessica and Daniel looked up at Michael with hopeful faces. He then took out a piece of paper and showed it to them. It was a rental listing for an old apartment. Daniel seemed unable to comprehend the situation, standing there dumbfounded. You're joking, Dad. Are you telling us to live in this rundown apartment? I can't live in such an old place, and there's no way I can work. Seeing their responses, I pressed on even further. Also, can you sign this for me? Huh? What does this mean? You want to disown us? Daniel's words prompted Jessica to quickly scan the document. She then continued to stare at us with a pale face. Wait, what's this about? You're putting my daughter up for adoption. She's my child. And Daniel giving up his inheritance rights. That's why you should read the document carefully. You two have always neglected your granddaughter, haven't you? Always leaving her with the maid, never once wondering how is my daughter doing. You might get by somehow, but she's still little and defenseless. That's why I'll protect and raise her properly. Watching Jessica's surprised face, I presented further evidence. I wanted her to understand. Look at this document. It's a list of tasks the maid has done. Can you say you've been parenting diligently after seeing this? But this document, maybe the maid just. You want to say the maid just made it up. She has served us faithfully for 20 years. I trust what she says. Jessica was at a loss for words. Seeing her like that, Michael quickly handed Daniel the document. After Daniel signed it, we were informed it was time for the departure, and we all left. When we returned home after the cremation, to our surprise, Jessica's parents were visiting. After explaining the situation and serving them tea, a distraught Jessica rushed in. Mom, you won't believe what's happening. We're being bullied by our mother-in-law and might be kicked out of the house. And she's taking our daughter too." While in the middle of packing, Jessica burst into the living room exclaiming this. But her mother sipped her tea silently, ignoring her words. "Mom, why? Dad, you understand how I feel, right? Please, help," she pleaded with her father as well, but he simply sipped his tea without answering. The reason was that we had been reporting to them about Daniel and Jessica's marriage and subsequent events all along. Initially concerned about their wayward daughter, they had reached their limit of patience when her attitude remained unchanged after marriage. Jessica, sign this document for a moment. Wait, why is this an inheritance renunciation document? Of course, why wouldn't I? You left without settling the compensation from before, and you keep evading responsibility? Here you are causing new problems, hurting kind-hearted people, and neglecting your child. You're no longer our daughter. I don't want you to call me Mom ever again." Jessica, having been disowned, was deeply shocked and froze for a moment. Without a care for Jessica's feelings, her mother continued her verbal assault. "If you think you can come back years later seeking forgiveness, think again. We're done. No more meetings, no more talking." "But Dad, you understand me, right?" Jessica clung to her father, seeking solace. From what was said before, her father had always adored Jessica. And even after she ran away in the past, he had settled the compensation on her behalf. "I won't say it, Jessica." Hope briefly shone in Jessica's eyes, but it was extinguished in the next moment. "I'm tired of always stepping in for others." "No way." After that, Jessica's parents continuously ignored her pleas. As they were leaving the room, they bowed their heads apologetically to us. When we informed them that Jessica and Daniel would be taking care of the compensation, they seemed satisfied. It appears Jessica's parents are already proceeding with legal measures through an attorney to recover the compensation from her. Leaving the legal matters to the attorney, they plan to sell the house and move somewhere else once they receive the compensation. While discussing this, Jessica returned to the living room, now with Daniel. Contrary to his demeanor at the funeral, Daniel began to speak confidently. "Did you know? Even if you're forced to renounce an inheritance, you can reverse that decision. If we prove we were threatened, inheriting is still possible. Tough luck for you." "Oh, is that so? But no worries, we, along with Jessica's parents, have plans to donate to charitable activities. So even if something happens to us, all the funds will go there, and none will come to you." Daniel seemed at a loss for words due to the unexpected event. He simply stood there, mouth agape in astonishment. Jessica also stood pale-faced, unable to utter a word. "Isn't it odd that strangers have been here this entire time? We've hired professionals to handle the remaining luggage, so could you start heading out?" Daniel seemed on the verge of making a retort, but in the end, he remained silent. He left the room with a downcast expression. Jessica, appearing slightly angered, glared at me. "Jessica, is there something you'd like to say? Where is my daughter? Give her back." "No, she's part of our family now. She's no longer part of yours. But she has my blood. Are you trying to take away all the child support and everything? You're so greedy. Money, always money. I sighed. I was astonished at Jessica's constant preoccupation with money. But I smiled gently at her, delivering the final blow. Unfortunately for you, I don't struggle with money. Being able to spend each day with her makes me truly happy. Thank you for giving birth to her. Jessica, overwhelmed with confusion, left the house holding back her tears. After a while, I called the nanny who was taking care of my granddaughter and asked her to come back home. That night, after Jessica's parents had left, I finally had a moment to indulge in stories of the past. It seems Daniel and Jessica, with Michael's help, had moved to a rundown apartment. Jessica, afraid of bugs, couldn't keep the house tidy, and the place was in a mess. Though it appeared they had already divorced, they couldn't afford to live separately due to financial constraints, and their frequent arguments could be heard. Daniel, it seems, was working day labor jobs and, having never held a steady job before, was often reprimanded by superiors. Jessica started working in a nightclub but couldn't compete with the younger girls, and her income was reportedly minimal. Both of them would find new partners only to break up soon after. This cycle seemed to continue, and their arguments were loud enough for the neighbors to hear. According to a nosy elderly woman, Jessica's parents sold their home without hesitation, expecting the money they received from Jessica would be returned to them. Their next life chapter was to be abroad. Given that Jessica's father had worked for an international company in the past, and her mother was of mixed heritage, adjusting to life overseas probably wasn't much of a challenge for them. Now and then, I'd receive heartwarming postcards from them, adorned with snapshots of their new daily life and breathtaking landscapes, always bringing a smile to my face. On the other hand, I was caught up in the whirlwind of suddenly resuming parenthood. However, my granddaughter is so smart and adorable that Michael and I find joy in raising her every day. Michael is completely smitten with her, spending time playing with her from morning to night. He even got permission to bring her to work, so she accompanies him daily. Thanks to her presence, we've made progress in developing new products for children, and the company's performance is on the rise. Lately, the frequency of TV interviews has increased, making things quite hectic. For the sake of our granddaughter's future, we have deemed a solid education indispensable. We've arranged for several video calls a week with Jessica's parents, incorporating language lessons. Next spring, we've planned a small family trip, intending to visit Jessica's parents. Raising a child is exhausting but filled with little moments of happiness. I want to stay healthy until my granddaughter grows up, so I've been paying more attention to my diet and exercise. Every day is filled with discoveries and gratitude.